All right, Rabbi, good morning, good Vegh. It is a schos, Baruch Hashem, to begin a new week of learning Maseches Basra together. Beautiful new week of Cheskas Habatim together. A lot of excitement, a lot of beautiful Gemara. And Meretz Hashem is schos to take the journey with all of you. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsor for the month of Tammuz, Daniel and Batsheva Pava of Hashmonaim, Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the shiur and drushos this month, the commemoration of their father, Reb Shlomo ben Yehuda Aryeh, Vegh, Philadelphia, on the occasion of his first Yahrzeit. Reb Shlomo was a child survivor of Aushwitz, talmid muvhak of Reb Michel Ber Weismendel. He left 90 plus descendants who are yireh Shamaim. May his neshama have an aliya and his family a neshama. And the Daf Yomi shiur sponsors the shiur today in honor of Alan Wiseman's birthday. Mazel tov. Right day, correct day, right? Baruch Hashem. Right? We celebrate Alan on this special occasion. Mazel tov, Alan. We wish you bracha, mazel hatzlacha, and simcha, beautiful nachas from your mishpacha until 120 ad me'ah v'esrim shanim tavos. Mazel tov, mazel tov. Let's say with that, let us begin. A lot to do today. Not a very long daf, but still a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. So today's daf is Mem 40. We're going to pick up, and there's Hashem, on the bottom of Lamed Tes Amud Beis of 39b. And let's pick up Amar Rav Nachman. So we'll say last line, literally, Amar Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman said, Rava said in the name of Rav Nachman, Macha bifnei shnayim, vein tzarech lomar ksovu. Okay, so we'll say, so now, we're going through some very interesting ideas over here. Machal. Now, what is a machal? Take a look at the last Rashbam on Lamed Tes Amud Beis on 39b. So, machal b'fnei shayim einzarach lomar k'sovu ela kosim lo ha'edim shtar machal lema'arer lios biyodo le'edos shemicha b'sof gimel. So, we'll say, remember again, a machal means an objection. That's what we're dealing with this entire time. Right? I go ahead and I find Ruvain living on my property. Ruvain asserts that, remember again, he has a taina. He claims that he went ahead and he bought it from me. He also claims residency. And I lodge a machal. So I am going ahead and objecting to his presence on my land sometime during the actual first 3 years in which he's establishing residency. So Rava says as follows. A machal has to take place in front of two witnesses. Remember again, this is a machlokis that we had in yesterday's daf. Is machal in front of two? Is machal in front of three? So Rav is coming along, weighing in on this in the name of Rav Nachman, and saying, no, machal has to take place in front of two witnesses. Not only that, but I will say, what do the witnesses do with a machal? Like in general, what does a witness do with a machal? So Nachman says, what do you do with it? You write it down. You commit it to writing. Now, here's what's interesting. In general, are witnesses empowered to write down something if they have not been explicitly instructed to do so? So this is an interesting idea. So essentially, let me tell you the theme, and then we'll plug it in. The theme that the Gemara is going to develop is witnesses, or for that matter, we'll call witnesses, are permitted to write down anything that is objectively beneficial to the parties involved, even if they have not been instructed to do so. That's the halacha. So therefore, again, a machal is objectively beneficial to me because, again, I'm trying to prevent Ruvain from establishing chazaka. So therefore, halacha ma'aser Rav is saying two things. Number one, machal is made in front of two people. Number two, those witnesses have the ability to go ahead and commit it to writing, even if I don't ask them to do so. Now look at that Rashbam once more. Last Rashbam 39b. Ela kosvim lo ha'edim shtar machal lema'arer lios biyado le'edos shemicha b'sof gimel. So the witnesses are going to write down the machal. So that I have a proof that I objected within 3 years. Even though I did not command them to do so, right? I did not tell the witnesses to write down anything. So it's interesting. So the Rashbam understands that this is a din in Zachan lo adam shlo b'fanav. What's Zachan lo adam shlo b'fanav? You're allowed to do something objectively beneficial for someone without their consent and without their knowledge. Now, of course, again, it has to be objectively beneficial. So again, this is a good example over here. Think about this. So I object to the fact that Reuven's living in my property. It's now, again, for me to have written proof of this machal could only help me. There's no downside involved for me. Therefore, witnesses are allowed to go ahead and write it down even without being asked to do so. Top of Mem. Fine. The Gemara goes weiter. Moda bifnei shnayim. What about a moda? So I will say, what's a moda? Take a look at the top Rashbam again. V'chein moda b'fnei shnayim. So he says, Misha ansu limkar v'litein es shalo bal karcho. V'lichtov shtar mechira o matana b'fnei edim. Sarach lodio koldem lachin l'shnei edim v'lomar du'u lachem shemechira zu o matana shel sada zu she'ani rotza lasos leploni shalo beratzon nafshi esa ki onsani umachricheni bal karchi. So let's listen to this. Ruvain forces me to sell him, whatever it is, real property, no property, doesn't really matter. So I'm going ahead and engaging in the process, right? So again, remember, he's going to pay me, but this is happening under duress. So now so here's the issue. Right now, I am powerless to do anything. So I have to go through the motions of the sale or go through the motions of the gift, right? So I have to do it, but I want it to go on record that I'm being coerced. Why do I want it to go on record that I'm being coerced? Why? Because sometime later on when I have the ability to reverse it, I want to be able to do so. I want to be able to show that this was not a valid sale, not a valid gift. So in this case over here, so you have to, if you are being coerced to engage in a sale, or being coerced to go ahead and give a gift, so in order for that to be retractable later on, you have to make your moda. Moda bosai means like to make something known. I have to make it known that I'm being coerced, and who do you have to make this known in front of? 2 witnesses. So moda bifnei shnayim, and once again, ve'in tzarech lomar ksovu. And ultimately, again, I do not have to instruct the witnesses to write down the moda. Why not? Why don't I have to instruct them? It's objectively beneficial that this moda be committed to writing, right? I need this in writing because sometime later on, when I'm able to take Reuven to Beis Din and say he coerced me to sell or he coerced me to give him a gift, then again it's helpful for me to have something in writing. So therefore, again, 2 things: moda has to take place in front of 2 witnesses, and it can be committed to writing even if I don't instruct them to do so. Now, finish up that Rashbam. The Rashbam says something very interesting. He says. It says, I'm in the first of the short lines of the Rashbam. Second, actually, Vayom olamachar tavana lebedina umarana l'shtare epumaychu shemasarti moda lefnechem kodem shenaase hashtar. So this is interesting. So now that I have this moda in writing, so at some point in time I'll be able to go to Beis Din, present the Beis Din the fact that I was coerced to sell or I was coerced to gift, and I'll be able to go ahead and reclaim my property. Now, the Rashbam gives a very important qualification over here. The davka kodem ksivas hashtar, aval acharei kein ein hamoda shavakum. Now, the timing of a moda is incredibly important, right? When do you have to lodge your moda? Before the transaction of the sale or before the transaction of the gift, right? That's when the moda has to happen. Why? He says, if you only make your moda after you gave the gift, or after you went out and you made the sale, the moda, what's the right word? You're making it known to the witnesses that this was coerced does not work. Why? So we'll say this is incredibly important. So remember again, let's play this out, right? So Reuven is forcing me to sell a piece of property. So what happens? So now I tell in front of 2 witnesses, I'm being coerced. I'm being coerced to do this. I do not want to do this, I'm being coerced. So what's the halacha? The halacha is, number 1, you have to make that statement in front of 2 witnesses. Number 2, they have the ability to go ahead and commit it to writing, even if I don't ask them to do so. Why? It's beneficial for me to have this in writing, because then at some point later on, I'm going to take this document, go to Beis Din, show Beis Din I was coerced to sell. Beis Din's going to give me back my property. Says the Rashbam, moda only works if I do it before my transaction with Reuven. If I go ahead and I quote-unquote sell the property to Reuven, and then after the sale I come before witnesses and say, I was coerced, and witnesses write that down, so now I have a coercion document that I can go to Beis Din and reclaim my property, Rashbam says, disaster. Why is that a disaster? Because every Chaim Yankel who has buyer's remorse is going to say that the seller was very pushy. Very pushy. The edge was I feel like I was coerced. And then the Rashbam says you could go ahead and undo every single transaction under the premise of coercion. So therefore, again, this shtar moda, this document that says you were coerced only works if I did it before my forced sale to Reuven. So again, the timeline over here is very important. Reuven says, sell me your property or else. I have no choice. Before I sell to Reuven, I go over to two witnesses. Chevra, right? I'm telling you right now, Levi, Yehuda, my two witnesses, I am being coerced to sell. Rav Nachman says, Levi and Yehuda hear the testimony. They commit it to writing, even if I don't ask them to do so. They give me that document. I go through the sale with Reuven because I'm being coerced. I have no choice. But sometime later on, what could I do? Go to Beis Din, take out that document, show I was coerced into the sale, and hopefully get my property back. Beautiful. That's case 2. Next. Kinyan. Bifnei Shnayim. Bein Tzarech Lomar Ksovu. So remember again, case number 3, Kinyan. So interestingly enough, the Rashbam gives the example of, did I skip? Sorry. Hoda Bifnei Shnayim Bein Tzarech Lomar Ksovu. So I'll say, Hoda, which ultimately again is a document of admission. Look at Rashi. Hoda b'fnei beis Adam shemot lechaveiro b'fnei beis shechayiv lo moneh. So let's watch this. I go over to Reuven, and in front of Reuven I say, Reuven, I owe you $1,000. Now I will say, just to be clear, there is nothing in writing for this, right? There's nothing in writing. There's no loan document. There's nothing, right? All there is now, I go in front of Reuven and I say, Reuven, I owe you $1,000, and I say this in front of two witnesses. That's called the Hodah. So Hodah b'fnei Shnayim, in order for Hodah to be binding, right, or to be meaningful, it has to be done in front of two witnesses. V'tzarech lomar ksovu. Now this is very important. But the witnesses are not empowered to write down my admission unless, of course, what? I instruct them to do so. Why? Because again, it's detrimental for me to have that in writing. Remember again, there are two different types of loan, right? There's a milva b'shtar and a milva b'peh. There's ultimately, again, there's a verbal loan, and then there is a loan recorded in a document. What's the difference? A loan recorded in a document is usually secured by real property, puts a lien on real property. A verbal loan is not secured by real property. So that's a pretty big difference amongst other differences as well. So therefore, remember, again, I will say, the theme, as we've said before, is witnesses are empowered to go ahead and commit something to writing, even if they weren't asked, as long as it is of objective benefit to the party involved, to the party who's instigating the edus, to the party who's giving the testimony, as long as it's objectively beneficial. So again, right, you can go through this, right? The macha, I object to Reuven using my land. That could be written down even without my permission, because halach, or without my instruction, because it's beneficial to me, right? Moda'ah, I'm being coerced, that could be written down without my permission, because again, it's objectively beneficial to me. Hoda, right, they're saying moda and hoda. Moda is when I'm making known to the witnesses I'm being coerced to engage in a transaction. Hoda, I admit that I owe Reuven money. The witnesses cannot commit that to writing unless instructed to do so. Beautiful. Let's go back there. The Gemara says, Kinyan, bifnei Shnayim. So we'll say, what's Kinyan? Exactly as it sounds, right? So I go ahead and I do a kinyan, just to keep it easy, like a kinyan chalipin. Remember again, also we have this kinyan chalipin. I go ahead and I give my handkerchief, right, to Reuven. Reuven and I are exchanging I want to acquire something from Reuven. So I go ahead and I give Reuven my handkerchief. He lifts off my handkerchief and I acquire his donkey, whatever it is, right? So what's the halacha? If we did this kinyan in front of two witnesses, kinyan bifnei Shnayim, ve'eino tzarech lomar ksovu. Now this is interesting, and a kinyan could be automatically committed to writing, even if I did not instruct the witnesses to do so. Right? And I do not have to instruct them ultimately again to go ahead and commit a trial. Look at Rashbam for just a moment. Kinyan, it's about probably 15 lines into the wider lines. Kinyan, Rashbam says, Sudar. I'll call davar b'fnei beis v'lo baitla. So mishum degabe kim shtaros. So what's the idea over here? So that's why Hashem gives the example of kinyan sudar. Right? I give Reuven a handkerchief. He lifts up the handkerchief. I acquire his object. That has to be done in front of two witnesses, and they have the right to commit it to writing, even if no one asks them to do so. Okay, next. Kiyum shtaros. I will say now kiyum shtaros. Now this is switching gears. We're both remember again, what's kiyum shtaros? Kiyum shtaros is, remember again, in general, we assume person has a document. Let's say a simple document. I lent Reuven $1,000. We codified it in a document. We have two witnesses who signed on it. Shalom Yisrael. Now, in general, once you have a document, so you're good to go. However, again, remember what could happen with the document. So let's play this out, right? So now the document, the loan is due on Rosh Chodesh Av. I come to Beis Din on Rosh Chodesh Av. I produce my document. Reuven now owes me $1,000. Is the case closed? Is that it? No, what could Reuven say? What could Reuven say? You're Reuven, what could you say? It's forged. It's forged. Right? It's a fraudulent document. So we'll say, so now, okay, and Reuven is entitled to do that. What do I then have to do? What do I have to do? I have to find the witnesses, Levi and Yehuda, and I need them to go ahead and testify that they really signed on the shtar, they witnessed the whole thing, and that's it. And I have to prove. Then we'll say, that's fine, and that's part of due process. But let's say I'm concerned, let's say I'm moving somewhere, or for that matter, again, people move on. I don't mean like in the life sense. I just mean like people move places, right? So I'm not necessarily going to have an easy time getting the witnesses. There's a mechanism called kiyum shtaros, which essentially means you have your document certified. You bring the document to Beis Din, and through a whole process of certification, Beis Din essentially stamps certified. Once the document is certified, no one could claim that it's fraudulent. So we'll say, so the process of kiyum shtaros b'shlosha. So what that means is that takes place in front of three. What does it mean it takes place in front of three? Beis Din. Beis Din. The common denominator up until now is you've been dealing with things that essentially the realities are created through witnesses, through Eidim. Now we come to kiyum shtaros. Kiyum shtaros ultimately, again, is only done in the presence of a Beis Din requires three. Okay, beautiful. So the Gemara Rava says, I kashili, ha kashili. Rava says, out of this whole list, remember, all of this was Rava quoting Rav Nachman. So Rava says, you know what, this whole list is fine, but out of this whole list, if I would have a question, I would have a question on the following case. Hai kinyan hechi dami. What's the case of kinyan? Right? Let's talk about this kinyan for just a second, right? So what did Rav Nachman say? If I do a kinyan sudar with Reuven, right? I give Reuven my handkerchief. He lifts up my handkerchief. I acquire his donkey. So Rav Nachman said this is done in front of two, and it can be committed to writing even if I did not ask the witnesses to write it down. So Rav says, let's talk about that for a second. I kashili ha kashili. Hi kinyan hechi dami. How does kinyan work? What's the mechanism of kinyan? I kamaisa Beis Din dami. If kinyan has essentially the status of an act of Beis Din, then the bait lasa, then it should have to be done in the presence of three. Ilo kemaisa Beis Din, but if at the end of the day, again, kinyan is not like a maisa Beis Din, and therefore it's just a transaction between two parties, right, that just needs to be witnessed, then ultimately, again, amai eno tzarich lomar ksovu. Then why doesn't it require an explicit instruction to the witnesses to write it down? In other words, what Rav is really bothered by is, I don't understand, why is it exactly that you could record, that witnesses have the right to record a kinyan without being asked to? Without being asked to. It's not so pashut that that's of objective benefit. In other words, let's play this out for just a second. So if kinyan works as like a function of Beis Din, it should require three. And if kinyan is not a function of Beis Din, but it's just a transaction between parties, then why do we automatically assume that witnesses have the right to record it in writing without being asked to do so? To which the Gemara says, you're right. The Gemara says, Basra debai hadr pashta. So after Rava asked the question, he then answered it. The olam lav kamaisa Beis Din dami. A kinyan is not like an act of Beis Din, right? A kinyan is a transaction between parties. It has to be witnessed. Because if it's not witnessed, then Lamaisa, again, either party could contest that it actually occurred. So a kinyan is like a transaction between two parties. That's why it doesn't need three. So why is it that halacha Lamaisa, witnesses have the right to record it without being asked? So why do witnesses have the right to record a kinyan, even if not being asked to do so? Mishum destam kinyan leksiva omeid. So Rabbi said this is a fascinating statement. The Gemara says because stam kinyan, a kinyan is meant to be recorded. Rabbi say, what is a kinyan? What is a kinyan? A kinyan is an accusatory act that establishes a new chain of ownership. The problem just is both parties have a vested interest in what? In that kinyan being memorialized. If it's not memorialized, then how do you know that it happened? So the Gemara says this is a principle. Stam kinyan leksiva omeid. Parties, again, the parties are entering into a kinyan willingly. Both of them are going to want some way, some record of the kinyan. Therefore, a kinyan itself is always meant to be recorded. Good. Look at Rashi, Rashbam. This is towards the bottom of the daf, probably about 12 lines up from the bottom. The stam kinyan leksiva omeid mishum de'ein la'achar kinyan klum. And I will say, it's interesting. when you do a kinyan chalipin with someone, right? You do a kinyan chalipin with someone. So that's you see this like by a chasana, right? By a chasana. So right, this is the paradigmatic example. The chasana is saying there by the ksuva, right? Dazed and confused like a deer in headlights, right? And what happens? The Masad Kiddushin goes through the ksuva. He nods his head obediently, usually not having a clue what anyone around him just said. Right? Then now we say to him, you know what? Your verbal agreement to this document is it's not binding. You have to do a kinyan. So different practices. Some have the Eidim give the handkerchief sometimes. Masad Kiddushin gives the handkerchief. Anyway, what happens? So the chassan lifts it up, right? So it's such an interesting moment. So the whole explanation, everything going on, the chassan lifts up the handkerchief, and in that moment, we're done. Right? He's Mekabel Kinyan. So it's so interesting, right? So like it's this simple act of taking an object, lifting it up, and suddenly like pretty much just signed his life away, right? That's like that's it. Like that's it. Like you're in. Like that's so what the Gemara is pointing out over here is if you look at a kinyan is such a simple, quick act. It needs something to indicate that it occurred. Otherwise, again, now obviously you have eidos there. But the problem with eidos is that, again, should it be contested at some time later on, right? You'd have to assemble the eidim again. So this concept of stam kinyan l'ksiva omen means such a simple and quick act needs to be memorialized in some more concrete form. Therefore, everyone always understands that whenever there's a kinyan, it's always going to be committed to writing. That's why the Rashbam says over here, Mishum de'im lachar kinyan klum. After kinyan, nothing really happens. The chayvan de makna le'besuder b'fnei edim u'memar laknoso miyad ve'eno medacheu ad she'ilech v'yimshach b'metaltalin o yelech v'yachsech b'kakos medkavin hu laknos b'an yafeh. So again, because especially chalipin just happens so quickly and so simply, and the whole idea, you pick up a handkerchief, and with one lifting of a handkerchief, your entire life has so fundamentally changed that needs to be memorialized in writing. Incredible. Okay, let's go back there. Rabba v'Rav Yossi Tavayu lo kasvin al moda ela aman delot sayes dina. So we'll say, so now Rabba and Rav Huna say as follows. Remember, let's go back to the case of moda. What was moda? I am being coerced to sell property to Ruvain. So before I go ahead and I actually sell the property, before I engage in the transaction, I go in front of two witnesses. I say, Chevra, I am being forced to do this. I'm being forced to do this. So what did Rav Nachman say? The witnesses hear it, and what do the witnesses do? The witnesses have the right to commit it to writing, even though they're not being asked to do so. Okay. Why? It's beneficial for me. I am the aggrieved party. I am the coerced party. Right? It's beneficial for me to ultimately have this in writing. So this is actually very interesting. So Rabbi and Rav Yosef say, by the way, the only time you have to commit a modah to writing is when the coercer is someone who doesn't pay attention to Beis Din. Someone who is not going to respond to a summons to Beis Din. However, again, the Gemara says, now why? What's the logic? Because if you're dealing with someone, look at Rashbam for just a moment. Last three lines. Aman lo tzayis dina sarvan bedin. Di tzayis dina lema le lo anisas. Di ika anis le amai lo tabat le bedina. So it's very interesting. So Abai and Rava, Rabba and Rav Yosef are saying the only time you have to commit a modah to writing is where the coercer is someone who is not normally going to pay attention to Beis Din. Because if the coercer is someone who's going to pay attention to Beis Din, then what? Just summon him to Beis Din. I don't need a document. Just issue him a hazmana. Call him to Beis Din, challenge him in Beis Din, bring him to a din Torah, and he'll show up. It's only we're nervous about a guy who's not going to listen to Beis Din. For a guy like that, you have to go ahead and put the modah into writing. Now it's interesting, by the way, right? So say yourself 1 second. If it's a guy who listens to Beis Din, right, then bepashtos what? He's not going to be a coercer, right? In other words, that if it's a guy, so again, welcome to the world of the human condition. That is not true. We all live with contradictions, right? I consider myself someone who is a frum Jew who loves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yet I commit multiple averos every single day. So how do I reconcile those two things? Right? If I'm frum and I love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then I don't do averos. And if I do averos, then obviously I don't love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what's the answer? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. That's the way we work. We all live with contradictions. And they're both right. They're both right. I love the Ribono Shel Olam with every fiber of my being. And yet, I also love doing Averos with every fiber of my being. I do Averos every single day, and I do them well, and I do them proficiently, and I do them with Zrizos, and with Islavos, and with Devekos. How does that work? I'm a person filled with contradictions. I'm a person filled with contradictions. And I will say every single one of us lives with these contradictions. Now, obviously, the goal in life is to work through your contradictions, right? The goal in life is to try to resolve or to minimize. You will never fully eradicate your contradictions, because to be alive means to live with some element of inherent contradiction. The avoda in life is to recognize the contradictions, to own the contradictions, and to try to the best of my ability to work through and resolve the contradictions, knowing that I will never fully resolve them. I embrace the fact that I will always live in some state of contradiction. And the beautiful part is that Ribono Shel Olam accepts it. Kadosh Baruch Hu loves me despite it. All he wants is to see that I'm actively trying to work through it day after day. So you can have this guy. Who's, you ask Ruvain, do you listen to Beis Din? Of course. Who doesn't listen to Beis Din? Ruvain, you're forcing me to sell me your land. Two different things. Let's not muddy the waters, right? Two different things. I'm coercing you to sell the property, but I still listen to Beis Din. So it's an incredible idea. Everybody, Ruvain lives with contradictions. We live with contradictions. Such is the nature of the human condition. Abaye Rava says, this is very interesting. Abaye Rava say no. Don't Afilu alai va'alecha. Abaye Rava says no. When Rav Nachman says that we commit a modah to writing, that's for everyone. Doesn't matter who the coercer is. All right, Abaye and Rav say, even if the coercer is someone like us, right, you're still committed to writing. The idea is, and again, it makes sense. It's an objective benefit for the victim of coercion to have that in writing. He has a document that says that Elijah modah. I will say again, I just want to point out. Remember, the document itself doesn't. What does the document say? The document says that Silber came before us and told us that he was being coerced to sell his property to Ruvain. Does the document say that my claim is correct? No. But what it does do is, it puts me on record. Before the sale of Ruvain as saying, I have been coerced. Abaye Rava says, that goes into, we don't look at the identity of the coercer for this, but rather, again, if someone comes before us, before a transaction, and says, I am being coerced to sell, I am being coerced to gift, we commit that to writing, irrespective of the identity of the coercer. Fine, I'm in Ardoi. Now, Ardoi says as follows, Kol modah, anytime that somebody is lodging this modah, this statement that he's being coerced, Amud Beis, de lo kasev be anan yadinon be ba'onsa de planyo, lav modahi. So I will say this is very interesting. So now comes along the Gemara, comes along the Nardoim, and the Nardoim give an extra qualification. Not only is every modah committed to writing, but a modah also has to have the following statement. Modah has to say, we the witnesses know that the claimant is being coerced to sell property. Right? Anan yedana be ba'onsa de planya. We know that he's being coerced. Look at the Rashbam, Tap Rashbam 40b. Shonis gomer yeshlo umakirin anu eza onis ilokasa bahachi halastama kasvu kloni amal shenes. So this is exactly what we just addressed. So the Nardoim say, whoa. To write a document that says Silber came before us and told us that he's being coerced by Ruvain to sell his land. So the Nardoim say, what's the meaning of that document? Right? Imagine for a moment I come before two witnesses and I say, guys, so I'll tell you, I lent Ruvain $1 million. Right? Is anyone going to write down that document that Silber told us that he lent Ruvain $1 million? Right? Does that? No. Why? Because the witnesses have no proof of that. Right? All the witnesses know is that I came before them and I made a claim. That's wonderful. Maybe it's a spurious claim. Maybe it's a false claim. So then Ardom said, let's be clear. To commit a moda'ah to writing, the witnesses have to know that coercion has in fact occurred. The document has to say, Anan yadinan be da'onsa de planya. Not only did Silber tell us that he's being coerced by Ruvain, we know that he's being coerced by Ruvain. And if the modah doesn't have that line, then the modah is meaningless. The modah is meaningless. So the one says, whoa, let's analyze that a little bit. Because we'll say, that upped the ante significantly, right? That's not what we thought. This whole time we thought that I'm just coming before two witnesses and saying, guys, I want to let you know I'm about to sell this property to Ruvain. I want to put it on record. It's under duress. It's under duress, under coercion. Now I'm saying, no, that you don't write anything down like that because that's just one person's word. How do you create an evidentiary document based on just someone's statement? Rather, again, in order for the witnesses to write a modah, they must know firsthand about the coercion. So the Gemara says, let's analyze this. Modah demai. What's the modah that we're talking about over here? Idigita udimatanasa gilui milsa ba'almehi. So we'll say, if we're talking about a get or a gift. So let's say, for example, again, a man, before he goes ahead and he gives a gift, before he gives a get, right, he says to witnesses, he says, I want to tell you something, I'm being coerced to give this get. Now I will say, now remember, in order for a get to be effective, it must be given of the husband's free will. If it is not, it's called a get mu'usa, a coerced get. A coerced get is invalid. This will say this was all the controversy among around the original get laws in New York, right? That created some type of felt by someone's created some type of coercion to give a get, whether or not such halacha, such gittin ultimately again were valid or not. So we'll say it's also, this is very important in general. You know how important it is. Well, okay, the aguna crisis, the fact that there are women who are not appropriately receiving their gittin is an incredibly significant and serious issue. And there are mechanisms that exist that go ahead and deal with this. So the halachic prenuptial agreement, right, as created by the Rabbinical Council of America, there's no foolproof tool, but is so incredibly important and is something ultimately, again, that every couple should sign. There's also a post-nuptial, I forgot what it's called, not post-nuptial, but you could even sign the agreement, even if you didn't sign it beforehand. There are mechanisms, and even though there are people who say that the mechanisms are not perfect, but these types of mechanisms were absolutely created under the guidance of Gedolei Torah, and are absolutely halachically sound. The idea over here is, okay, I know we got into this over here, but separate share. But anyway, so let's say a man comes along before he gives a get, and he says, I'm being coerced. Or for that matter, again, I'm about to give a gift. And before I give the gift, I say I'm being coerced. So I will say, in those cases, my statement is enough to put coercion on record. There's no need for any more eidos on that because, again, I, as the husband, am the one who controls the get process. I, as the gift giver, is the one who goes ahead and controls the gift process. So if I make a statement before the get or before the gift that I'm being coerced and witnesses hear that, they could commit that to writing and there's no other evidence that is necessary. So when the Nardoim are saying that halacha l'maisa, the witnesses need to know evidence of coercion before committing it to writing, what are they talking about? If we're talking about a sale, Rava said you cannot write a modah on a sale. And as I said, this is actually very interesting. Rava felt that in general, when it comes to a sale, you cannot write a coercion document about a sale. Right? Why? Because Rava would say it's a disaster. Rava would say, can you imagine this? Let's say I come to witnesses and I say, I'm about to sell my property to Ruvain. I just want to let you know, I'm being coerced. If we allow witnesses to commit that to writing, just based on my statement, then what I will say, you could upend every single real estate transaction. Every transaction, because again, this is my insurance policy, right? Tomorrow morning, if I wake up and I have seller's remorse, right? I could pull out my modah documents. Rabbi said you cannot write a coercion document for a sale. So what are you talking about? To which the Gemara says, the olam dezvin. No, we are actually talking about a coercion document for a sale. And Modi Rava Hecha Da'anis Ukamasa de Pardesa. Rava agrees in a case where there was coercion, where there was ones, like in the case of the orchard. Right? What's the case of the orchard? Listen to this. Dahu Gavra, the Mashkin Pardesa Lachavri Litlas Shnin. So we'll say Mashkanta de Surah. Right? I lent Ruvain money for 3 years. Right? I lent him, let's just call it, $30,000. Okay, and the way we worked it was that just the opposite. I borrowed $30,000 from him. And the way we worked it out was I'm going to give him my field for use for 3 years. The value of the field is $10,000 a year. So at the end of 3 years, he'll give me back my field, and the debt is paid off. So watch this. Tehu Gavra. So I went ahead and I collateralized. I gave my field to Reuven as a mashkanta de surah for 3 years. Right? Basra de achla tlas shnei chazaka. So we'll say what happens after 3 years is over. So now here's the issue. Right? Reuven has been utilizing this field for 3 years uncontested. Right? Obviously, I didn't contest it because he has the right to be there. So after 3 years, Reuven comes over to me and he says like this, Silber, here's the deal. If you sell me this field, fantastic. And if you don't sell me the field, I will go ahead and hide the loan document, because as Reuven, as the lender, is the one who is in possession of the document. So I'll hide the document. And I'll just claim that I bought it from you. Because we'll say, remember again, at that point, Reuven will have two things. What he'll have? He'll have the taina. What's the taina? I bought it from you. He will have had residency, because he's been there for 3 years, uncontested. So Reuven essentially issues me an ultimatum. Now, again, Reuven is not a totally bad guy, right? Why isn't he a totally bad guy? What is he offering to do? He's offering to buy it. In other words, at least, we'll say, you always have to look. You have to find something positive in people, right? We're about to enter into the 9 days. The whole avodas avasim. You always have to find something positive. So at least he's not a ganef, right? At least he's what we call a chomes, right? Chamas is when you forcibly extract things from people, even for payment. So again, at the end of the day, Reuven is not he's not a total Russia. So at least he is willing to sell it. He's willing to buy it from me. So ultimately, I said, either I'll buy it from you and I'll offer you top dollar, or I'm going to hide the loan document. Right? I'll claim that I bought it from you, and I will win that case in court because I've been living here for 3 years uncontested. You never lodged a macha, right? And again, I have a taina. So what's that locha? So Gemara says, so I'll say this would be a case of a modah. So in this kind of case, again, what would I do? What would be my recourse? So we'll say, so the problem is really Reuven has me between a rock and a hard place. I don't really have any recourse. But what I can do is I can go to witnesses, and I can say to witnesses, guys, I just want to let you know, here's what's happening. So I'm going to sell because if I don't sell, it's going to be a total loss. But I just want you to know that the sale is being done under coercion. So therefore, again, in that kind of case, that's the kind of case where Allah Lamaisa, we would go ahead and write a modah. And therefore, again, I go through the sale, and at some point in time, whenever I have the ability to do so, I could produce that document in Beis Din and show that halacha l'maisa, again, I was coerced. Now, obviously, you need proof to coercion, right? That's what the Nardaim are saying. To say you were coerced, right? Popular to what contemporary society tells us, just because you say something doesn't make it true, right? So halacha l'maisa, the Gemara says over here, I could claim coercion, that's fine. I still have to prove coercion. In other words, but at least having a document that says that I was coerced, at least puts something on the record that coercion occurred over here. That this is not glat. Something happened over. So we'll say that would be the case of Modah. Okay, fascinating. Let's go weiter. Amar Yehuda. Hi, matanta temirta lo magbinaba. So we'll say this is a very interesting case. Matanasa temirta. Matanasa temirta means a gift given in secrecy. All right. So what does this mean? So take a look. At. Okay, Tamata, it's about about 15 lines up from the bottom. Matanasa Tamirta, Matana Tamuna. So we'll say, so literally again, it means a gift given in private. So the Gemara says, Hechi Dami, what's the case? Hechi Dami Matanasa Tamirta. What's the case of a hidden gift? This is very interesting. Rabbi Yosef, Damru Lasadi, Zilu Atmuru Vikasuvule. So Rabbi Yosef says the definition of Matanasa Tamirta, a hidden gift, is what I say to witnesses, listen to this. I go over to two witnesses and I say, Chevra, I want you to write the Shtar Matana. I'm gifting this property to Reuven. But do me a favor, don't write this document in public. Hide away somewhere and write it. Okay? Hide away somewhere and write it. So what says, the Gemara says, if this is the case, so Va'ika Da'amri, others say, Va'ika Da'amri, Amr Rav Yosef, others have different versions of Rav Yosef. The lo Amr Lahu, Teisvu b'shuka u'babraisa v'tikasvulei. So Rabbi said, this is interesting. In this alternate version, first one line in the Gemara, first in this alternate version, the definition of a hidden gift is where I don't say to the witnesses, go ahead and sit in the marketplace or sit in the street and write the document. So Rabbi said, so here's what's happening over here. So matanasa timirta means a gift that is recorded in private. So such a gift is not considered to be a valid gift. What's the definition of a gift recorded in private? The first version is where I actively give instructions to the witnesses to hide themselves and write it. The second version, the alternate version, is where I don't tell the witnesses to write it in public. Right? I failed to tell them to write it in public. If I fail to tell them to write it in public, that's called a gift given in private. So what's the practical difference between these two approaches? Iga benayu, stama. So most of the nafkamina would be, let's say where I just tell two witnesses, hey Chevra, right Levi, right Shimon and Levi, I want to go out and give a gift to Ruvain. Go write for me a document. So I don't explicitly say hide, but I also don't explicitly say go write it in public. So we'll say, so according to the first approach, as long as I'm not telling them to hide, then it's a valid gift document. According to the second approach, in order for it to be a valid gift document, part of the instruction has to be write the document in public. Failure to articulate that makes it a hidden gift, and as a hidden gift, ultimately, again, the gift is invalid. Now, I will say, if you take a look, okay, so the idea over here is, just to understand the idea. Okay, fine. So let's go back to the Gemara. So the Gemara says as follows. Rava says, so we'll say, okay, so let me just tell you something for just a second. What is this chap with a hidden gift? So as you will say, if I'm telling witnesses to go ahead and write a gift document in private, there's obviously something's up. Something's up, right? What is it that I'm trying to hide? So therefore the Gemara says, a gift essentially is only valid if it's public. The moment that you're trying to make it private, right? So it sounds like something fishy is going on over here, and therefore, again, it's going to be an invalid document. Now, what is the definition of a private gift document? That's a machlokes. First opinion, where I tell the witnesses, hide yourself away and write it. Second opinion, where I fail to tell them to do it publicly. Okay, so two different versions, but in its essence, leaving aside that machlokes about details, in its essence, everyone is in agreement that a private document, or I should say a secretive gift document, is going to be invalid. So Gemara tells us, Gemara goes right there. Second wide line. Now we'll say, here's what's interesting. As much as a secret gift document is not valid in that it does not properly convey ownership of the item to the recipient, what it does do, I will say, is it serves as an objection to another transaction. So watch this. The Gemara tells us the story. So this statement of Rava, that a private gift document, although it's not an effective vehicle for conveyance of the gift, absolutely says moda. What's moda? What's moda? Moda is when you go on record saying that something is coerced. Right? So what Rava is saying is like this. A secret gift document is not effective to convey the gift to the intended recipient, but it is effective to serve as an instrument of objection to block or to prevent another transaction from occurring. So now this is incredible. Watch this. So Rabbi Papa said, by the way, Rava didn't say this explicitly. Rather, this is gleaned from the following case. This is a great case. Itmar, Tahu Gavra, the Azal Kedusha Isisol. Listen to this. Ruvain was going to marry Rachel. He fell in love. Going to marry Rachel. Amrullah, Rachel says to him, no problem, I'm happy to get married. Ikasvi li kulo nechasech. If you sign over to me all of your property. Right? She just wants security. Right? So what happened? She says, I'll marry you, but sign over to me all of your property. I want everything in my name. Okay? Fine. So what happens? So the Gemara says, "V'ilo lo avin alach." And if you don't, I'm not getting married to you. Don't get me wrong. I'm really in love, but either you sign over all of your property to me, and I'll marry you. Or if you don't sign over your property, I wish you only mazel and bracha. So Ruvain, azal kasvi la lekulu nechasi. Ruvain went and he did it. People do crazy things for love, right? So the Maisa, Ruvain went ahead and he signs over all of his property to Rachel. Now watch this. Reuven, this is not a first marriage, right? So Reuven had a son from another marriage. Asa breika shisha, amar levahi gavra maite habiale. So loosely translated, the son comes over to his father and says, Dad, what's up? Right? What about me? In other words, that's, I love you, you should live until 120, but that's my inheritance. In other words, right? What did you just do? You just signed away all of the property, ultimately, again, to this woman. In other words, it's just not fair. What about the fact that this is ultimately supposed to be one day mine? So the Gemara says, Amar lahu l'sadi. So what does Reuven do? Now, I just want to be clear. For the story to make sense, Rashbam puts this in. The way this has to happen is as follows. Reuven goes over to Rachel, marry me. Rachel says, I would love to spend the rest of my life with you. You're the man of my dreams. Just please sign here, right? In other words, just I would talk with my attorneys, and I'll marry you if you convey all of your property to me. Reuven says yes. Now, to be clear, he says yes, but he has not signed any documents. Okay? So he's committed. He's committed to Rachel. I'm going to give you all my property. Fine. Okay? They're preparing the documents. He's walking. He meets his son. Son says, Dad, how can you sign over all the property to her? What about me? Reuven says, you know what, you're right. Shabbos says, now what does Reuven do? Amalu l'sadi, zilu atmuru be'ever yemina, the kasfulei. So Reuven now says to two witnesses, Shimon and Lid, here's what I want you to do. Guys, hide away, go somewhere secretive, private, and I want you to write a document that says, I convey all of my property to my son. So remember again, he's commanding the witnesses to write this document before he signed anything with Rachel. So he's writing a gift document to his son, conveying all of his property to his son. Now remember again, this is a matanasa timirta. He's telling the witnesses, go do this in private. Why is he doing it in private? Why is he doing it in private? Listen, nobody wants to share their shalom bayis, right? So what happens? He on one hand, what he's looking to do is he's looking to convey his property to his son. He doesn't want Rachel to find out about it because then Rachel's not going to marry him. So he goes in and he tells the witnesses, hide away and do it. The kasule. So we'll say, so what's the halacha? So we'll say, so now, here's what ended up happening. So just as the story played out, so the witnesses hid away, wrote this document saying that Reuven gives over all of his property to his son. Fine. The next day, what does he do? He signs the document giving away all of his property to Rachel. So now so at some point in time, so what happens? So you can imagine what happens. Probably, I don't know when everything kind of blew up. Probably like after the Levaya, right? Is when everything really comes out. So what happens? They brought the din Torah before Rava. So Rava said, look, in this kind of case, neither required, right? Neither Rachel doesn't acquire the property of Reuven, and son doesn't acquire the property of Reuven. Now watch this. Man dechaz asavar mishum dahavya moda lechaverta. So Rava says, this is actually interesting. So bepashtos, the reason must be the following. Did Reuven's gift to his son work? Did his gift to his son work? No. Why not? It was a secretive gift document. And as we've established, secretive gift documents don't work. But what a secretive gift document does do, is it serves as an objection to another transaction. And in this case, which transaction did it serve as an objection to? To the transaction with Rachel. So therefore, again, really, at the end of the day, no one walks away with the property. I mean, that's not really true, because if Reuven did die, then essentially both documents would end up canceling each other out, and it would be Yerusha. But the Ma'aseh, for our purposes right now, leaving that aside, so again, the gift to son doesn't work because it was done secretively, and a secretive gift document doesn't work. But what it does do is, it serves as an objection to the latter transaction with Rachel and prevents her from acquiring the property. So Basra say, here you see it, Rava saying neither gift works. Now we assume, again, the reason for that is because, again, that it's a modah. The secretive gift document to the son is a modah, is an objection ultimately against the document to Rachel. Velohi. That's actually not the reason. It's not the reason. The Gemara says, it didn't work. I'll tell you why. Hasa mucha milsa. The machmas onsahu the kasavla. The Gemara says about hacha. So we'll say it's different in that case. It's different in the case. Why is it different in the case of Reuven and Rachel? They're really two separate things. The reason why his gift to his son didn't work was why? Why didn't it work? Why didn't that work? Why not? Because it was secretive. You can't give a secretive gift document. That doesn't work. So that didn't work because it didn't work. Why didn't the gift document to Rachel work? Why didn't it work? Because it was clear that it was happening because of coercion. That was a coerced document. And they both say that was so circumstantially clear. Everyone saw it, knew it. Reuven didn't want to give over all of his property to Rachel. Of course, why would he want to do that? But he wanted to marry Rachel. So he felt that the only way to marry her was to appease her. And that's why that was a coerced document. That's why it didn't work. But I both say, but again, we thought that the two documents were connected. That even though the private gift document to Reuven's son was an ineffective gift document, but it was effective, and then it served as a moda'ah, as a source of objection to the latter transaction with Rachel. To which the Gemara says, no, that's not what's happening over here. The two documents have nothing to do with each other. They're not interacting. They just both happen to be invalid transactions on their own. The gift to the son is invalid because it is a private gift document. And the gift to Rachel is invalid. Why? Why? Because it's clearly coerced. Clearly coerced. Incredible. Aval hacha mar nechalei delikne umar lo nechalei delikne. But in our cases over here, I will say, that halacha l'maisa again, one party wants the transaction to work, and the other party does not want the transaction to work. Fine. So I will say, so bottom line, halacha l'maisa, what comes out is a privatized or a secretive gift document does not work. Which is really very interesting. In other words, if you're going to give a gift, you have to be willing to go ahead and convey that publicly. Because if you're not willing to convey it publicly, then something, as they say, doesn't shemek right. Something doesn't smell right. Something is not right about that. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, again, the gift will be ineffective. Now, we have to circle back to our original question, which is, what is the definition of a private gift? What is the definition? So remember, again, we had two versions. So Gemara says, stama mine. Now, let's go back for just a second. What were our two versions of what is a private gift? First version said, where I say to the witnesses, go and hide and write the gift document. Second opinion said, no. It's where I fail to tell the witnesses to write it publicly. In other words, the only way to write an effective gift document is to actively tell the witnesses, I want you to sit in the street and write it. I want you to sit in the shuk. Now, do they have to sit in the street or have to sit in the shuk? No, they don't have to. But part of my proper conveyance of the gift is actively telling them to do it publicly. What was the nafkamina bosai? The nafkamina is, I just tell two witnesses, please write a document conveying a gift to Reuven. I didn't give them instructions. I didn't tell them to hide, but I also didn't tell them to go public, to do it in public. So what is the status of such a document? So Ravina bosai, Memal from Dalef, 41a. Ravina Amar Lo Chayshinan. So Ravina said, in that case, the document is fine. In other words, we are not. If I tell witnesses, go and write a gift document to Reuven, but I don't explicitly tell them go and write it in the street or go or write it in the marketplace. I just give them a general instruction. So Ravina says, Lo Chayshinon, we are not choshesh that this is a private gift, and therefore again the document is good. Rav Ashi says, no, we are actually concerned that failure to give an explicit instruction to write the document publicly, may be construed as a private gift. And what's the halacha? The hilchasa chayshinon. So Rabbi said the halacha is, in order for, this is actually very interesting, the halacha is we are choshesh. The halacha is, let me just say this outside. So therefore, essentially what comes out is like this. The definition, in order for a gift document to be in order for me to do a proper commissioning of witnesses, to go ahead and write a gift document, I have to explicitly tell the witnesses, write this in public. Write it in the marketplace. Write it in the street. Now, they don't have to write it in the marketplace or the street, but they have to be actively told to do so. If I fail to explicitly tell them to do so, that is called a private gift, and a private gift will be ineffective. Look at the Rashbam, which is going to stop. The Rashbam says, "Delo magbinam ba, belchach tzarich lichtov b'soch hashtar, v'kach amar lanu kasvua b'shuka v'chasmuha b'bara." Shabbos says it's incredible. The Rashbam says, in order for a gift document to be valid, it must contain the following verbiage. It has to say, Silber told us, Shimon and Levi, to write a document, a gift document, conveying ownership of this property to Reuven, and he told us to write it in the street. He told us to write it in the shuk. The document itself must explicitly contain that verbiage. V'afagav Delo Amar Ela Kasvu Lo Stam Shtar Matana Kimoshinu Cham Kamar. Shabbos said, this is incredible. So halacha l'maisa, again, the way we paskin is that number one, first of all, two things. Number one, a private loan document is going to be ineffective. Private gift document is going to be ineffective because we're concerned that why are you keeping a secret if you're giving a gift? And I will say that halacha l'maisa, the document itself must actually contain the verbiage that the witnesses acknowledge that the grantor, the gift giver, went ahead and told us to write this document in public. You need that explicit verbiage. Only if it has that explicit verbiage, ultimately, again, is the document a valid vehicle of gift giving. All right, so I'll say, tremendous. What a start to the week. Shkaycha, what a daf. Beginning of a beautiful week. I'll say shkaycha, everyone. All right, Chavra on Zoom. Have a great day. I'm looking at you just to change the camera orientation. It should look like this. I wish you all an incredible day. And I'll turn it to the computer. Have a great day, Chavra.
It doesn't mean much. People say, like, marry me if I get more of my money.
It's good to be wanted.